Welcome in or welcome again to the Quantum series. This is Manan Zainuddin and I share here with you conscious learning and being. I always share Plutarch's famous saying, "The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled." Education is much beyond schooling and schoolwork. Education is never separate from us as conscious beings. Uncertain, dead or alive. Today we explore a very interesting thought experiment by the Austrian Erwin Schrödinger, the famous Schrödinger's cat. While discussing quantum mechanics, Schrödinger proposed that if a cat is put in a box with a bottle of poison and a radioactive source that may decay, causing the bottle to break apart and the poison to leak, killing the cat. He said that as long as the box is closed, no one can know whether the radioactive decayed, the glass broke and the poison poured out and got the cat killed. In other words, there is a probability that this happened or did not, 50-50 percentage. During that time of not knowing the occurrence inside that closed box, the radioactive source is decayed and not decayed at the same time. And we can also say the cat is both alive and dead, what's also called in quantum mechanics as superposition. This state can only be resolved knowing if the cat is alive or dead when the box is opened. So that means when it's observed. Again, observation is measurement in this case. So the outcome of this measurement in this experiment is probabilistic. This means it's based on probability. So what do we learn from this? Point number 1, the experiment shows that we can only know the state of the cat, dead or alive, when we open the box. But there is another point to consider here. This cat will not die unless the radioactive source decays. So if the radioactive source does not decay for any reason and we open that box, we will find the cat still alive. So how can we be sure when or whether this radioactive source will decay? We cannot. So it's random variable. A variable, it is something that may or does vary or change. We use this term in mathematics, in sciences, in programming, and in this case, it is random because it cannot be controlled by us. We cannot control the decay of the radioactive source. And this brings a key question of life. Are we able to control all factors in our lives? What decays can we predict? We can predict that hair turns gray and skin starts to wrinkle as humans get older, but we cannot predict death. So how many random variables are there in our lives? And can we accept that there are areas that we cannot control? Point number 2, the maybe. I have heard a story about a farmer who had good and bad experiences. So every time a good incident happened, the villagers came to congratulate him and say how good that thing was. His answer was always maybe. And every time a bad incident happened, the villagers came to comfort him and say how bad that thing was. And his answer was always maybe. If we look into our lives, do we always know what is good for us or what is bad for us? Haven't we many times thought that something was good and that we knew that it was the answer to all our problems? And then things happened and we said later, we are grateful that it didn't happen. Like our Creator planned something better or was protecting us from it. Or haven't we many times thought that something was bad and that we knew that it would negatively impact our plans? And then things happened and we said later, it seems that we did not see that whole picture. Point number 3, black, white, or gray. In certain situations in life, there cannot be a minimum or a maximum. If we roll the dice, we get the number 1 out of 6. It is impossible to get 3.5 or 4.2 or 2.7. We cannot get decimals. It's like saying black or white, not gray. In other words, one cannot get a minimum loss here, like when you calculate in the world we live in, such as an investment in which we can use a risk management metric called value at risk or the VAR. There is no continuous probability distribution as we know in statistical mathematics, probability density distribution. In the cat's experiment here, there are only 2 variables. The cat is to be found either dead or alive. So this brings us to certain questions. When do we know when to say a firm yes or a firm no? Can we say a firm yes or a firm no? While in the quantum world we can't. In our real world, we surely can when our values are involved, for example. And point number 4, probability or no probability. Now, we have all done the coin toss at least once in our lives. tossing the coin and waiting eagerly for it to land as head or tail. If after tossing it and having it landed without us seeing it yet, we might say there is 50% head or 50% tail. But we may also say it has already landed and marked head or tail. So there is no probability in this case. It is either 100% or 0% head or tail. So will these two remarks be different if we have looked at the coin in its landing position? Well, obviously, yes, because there will be no need to ask the question. The action has already happened and we saw the outcome. These are important to learn in statistics, two different approaches. One called the Bayesian, related to Bayes' law, and it is based on opinion, the 50-50, and frequentism based on the truth, what actually happened, what proved itself. It's the 100 or 0. And both approaches are used in everyday life and even in investment in the world of business. So when do we base our remarks or answers on opinion? And when do we base them on truth? And what is the threshold that makes us stop and say, I know it happened, this is the truth, and now I have to plan accordingly? It all depends on the act of opening that box to check on that cat, the act that occurred. But before that, to what extent can we decide? Erwin Schrödinger himself best explains it when he says, quote, the task is not so much to see what no one has yet seen, but to think what nobody has yet thought about that which everybody sees. End quote. There is so much to learn in this world. There is so much to experiment, and there is so much to learn about ourselves. Knowledge is as vast as the world. Awareness is as vast as the cosmos. And this is what we deserve. We deserve no less because we are much, much more.